I'm Isabel Cupryn, and I'm reporting for Canadian Film Review, and we're talking today to Jeremy Lalonde, who's the director of Out, which is a short film that's screening this year at TIFF. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Are you very excited to be screening at TIFF?
I am. It's my first film at TIFF, so it's nice to be amongst, these other really talented filmmakers from across Canada in this program.
Tell me about maybe some of the benefits and some of the challenges of doing the medium of short film in particular.
I guess the challenge is just the idea of making something short. There's the old joke that I apologize I didn't write you a shorter letter because I didn't have time. Or I apologize for writing you such a long letter, I didn't have time to write it shorter. Because, sometimes it's easier to just go on and on and on, so being succinct can be difficult. And luckily, I work a lot in television as an editor, so my brain is kind of tricked to condensing things down, because you often have to. If you're editing a commercial or a TV show, it has to be 30 seconds. You have no choice, or it has to be 22 minutes. So I've gotten, that's been part of my toolbox now, is to be able to get things right down and tight and focused. So for me, shorts are, the beauty of shorts for me is that you have kind of a different kind of playground. You don't have to follow a 3-act structure the way you would technically in a feature. You get to kind of play around a little bit more, and you can kind of just really play with the heart of an idea, as opposed to having to expand sometimes in ways that are unnecessary.
Tell me about what TIFF does in terms of putting short film out there and getting people aware of short film.
I think what TIFF does is, especially for shorts in particular, is it puts a stamp on something. We live in a society where 100 hours of footage is uploaded to YouTube every hour, every minute, I think. And so how do you stand out in that capacity? So film festivals, and particularly one like TIFF, really puts a stamp on it and says this is worth paying attention to.
And with all of that, and with the attention that the short films get from TIFF, is there, as a filmmaker, is there sort of a fear of, okay, what do I do next with this short film? Like, what's the next platform that I'm going to put it on?
Yeah, I've kind of become a little more savvy in the last year or two about that. And we've been lucky that we've been approached so far by a couple distributors for a short, which you think about, it's like, how do you distribute a short, right? But there are methods and there are venues.
Is it easier now, you think, than years ago? Is there more of an appetite for it, do you think?
For shorts? I don't know. I always thought it was such a shame that shorts aren't programmed alongside features in front, And there are a couple distributors, indie distributors, that are starting to do that now. One in Canada is IndieCan, which is run by Avi Federgreen, and he's starting to do that. And he's talked about pairing Out with other films in his catalog on a theatrical run. And I think that's exciting, and I don't know why more distributors don't do that, and alongside with the commercials.
Tell me a little bit about comedy in terms of, is it something that you can completely plan beforehand? Is there an element that it just the comic timing magically happens in the moment?
The way I approach comedy is through real situations, and I personally find the mundane very funny. So for me, for this film in particular, the idea of, like, just people coming together and having a dinner and talking about something awkward, it's like, how do you make that additionally funny? It's like, well, you add a layer of satire to it. So instead of just someone coming out to their family, they're sitting down and talking about coming out as a vampire. So for me, it's just adding a little twist on something simple and normal and making it a little bit more unique.
In the short, there's some really interesting moments which are, either sort of a long pause of silence, or just little subtle, facial expressions or gestures that people do. Were those all planned? Did the actors just sort of ad-lib those?
Some of them were. Some of them are written into the script just in terms of an awkward pause. And a lot of that is just when I direct, we sit down and we kind of play with that, and so before we shoot, we'll run the scene and we'll just play with it, and sometimes the actors usually will do something far better than what I had planned, in terms of like an awkward beat or an extra little moment or a huh or a sigh. Like, a lot of those things they bring that, and while we're rehearsing, it's like, we'll keep that, or we don't need that, or that's too long of a pause. Or sometimes, if we're not shooting a big oneer, we can, you know, tighten the pauses or lengthen them in the edit as well. So it's for me, comedy is so collaborative, and especially with actors, they bring a lot to it, and especially in terms of timing and adding little flourishes.
Do you think that the general public don't realize how much of a collaborative team effort it is and how many various people and aspects there are to it?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's funny. Like when I was a kid, I think originally I used to watch like TV and be like, I wanted to be a lawyer because lawyers get to say cool things. And then it wasn't for a while I realized, oh no, that's writers putting those words in their mouth. And then I remember, like, I think I was watching Alf, the show. I remember Alf?
Oh, yeah.
And thinking, man, these people are hilarious. And then for some reason going, oh, people are telling them what to say, or they're writing, or seeing the writing credit one time and being like, what's that mean? And asking somebody older, and they're like, oh, well, someone writes a thing and then they say it. And it's like, oh, so the actors aren't really funny. It's just but, you know, growing up and now and doing it myself, I realized that you all need to be funny or smart or poignant or whatever it is. Like, it is such a collaboration. And I think people that don't, there are, you know, writers and directors that don't view it that way. And I can't speak for their process, but I think the work suffers if you don't turn it into a living, breathing thing where the end result is best idea wins.
Well, in this, it was really interesting to see that each character, each actor and character sort of has their own style and their own flavor, and that sort of enhances the idea that each person in this family is sort of has their own individual personality. Was that a conscious choice?
I think so. I mean, that's also, again, that's just the actors coming up and making sure the characters are more than just stereotypes or archetypes. And playing off the relationships. Like there's, you know, on the page, I think the relationship between the sister and the dad doesn't come to life the way Paula Brancaty and David Huband bring it to life. Like that becomes such a more interesting thing where, you know, that's almost nothing on the page, and that's them bringing something out of it that wasn't there.
And when you're writing comedy, do you just sort of know from the beginning that the story is going to work, or is there a sense of, how do I know if this is really going to be funny when it happens?
It's kind of, I don't know. I mean, I write the jokes last. For me, it's about getting the story right, and then sometimes the jokes just happen. For me, I don't really write jokes. I more write moments. And for me, it's just like there's usually not a lot of lines that are funny. The lines are funny because of the moment they're in. Like a lot of my jokes are the word "what." And that's as a reaction to something else. So usually it's not like particularly like set-up, payoff joke. Sometimes there is a little bit of that. But I find more often than not, my humor comes just out of the situation.
So it's almost just framing the situation, and then the rest comes into play just because the situation itself is kind of absurd or awkward.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's kind of how I approach it.
Excellent. Well, it was a very, very interesting short. I really liked it, and it's got some interesting little like twists and turns to it, and really well done, really well acted. What's your next project? Are you still mulling something over? Do you have something in mind? What's coming next?
Yeah, I've got I have a feature called Sex After Kids that's also doing the film festival circuit right now, but I'm in development on a pilot that we're shooting this fall. It's called Bastards. And I have another feature in development that we're hoping to shoot next spring. I don't want to say the name of it just yet, but
Are they both comedies?
they are both comedies, yeah.
Do you think that that's completely where your heart is, or are you going to do something different one time?
I don't know. I mean, I like comedy a lot, and that's kind of my default. But I also, I mean, just thinking about like the shows I watch, I don't really watch a lot of comedic like television shows. I do, but like I'm into the more thriller kind of stories. So I'm trying to find a story that fits me in that world.